For more than 60 years, Robert Duvall has observed Hollywood from a vantage point few others share. He entered the industry when character-driven dramas were the backbone of cinema, and has remained active through the era of streaming platforms and global franchises. That span gives his reflections unusual weight. When he speaks about change, it doesn't sound like outrage or nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. It sounds like someone comparing two very different creative climates. Duvall has often suggested that the industry's transformation did not happen overnight. Instead, it evolved gradually, shaped by economics, technology, and cultural shifts. Where earlier decades centered on scripts and performances, modern filmmaking often begins with market projections and brand potential. To Duvall, that recalibration altered the emotional center of filmmaking. His comments are not framed as attacks, but as observations from a craftsman who values patience and nuance. Understanding his perspective requires looking closely at the life he built, the risks he took, and the principles he refused to compromise. Born on January 5, 1931, in San Diego, California, Duvall grew up in a household shaped by military discipline. His father, William Howard Duvall, served as a rear admiral in the United States Navy, and expectations for young Robert were clear and structured. A conventional path, service, stability, hierarchy, seemed predetermined. Yet Duvall has openly acknowledged that he struggled to fit neatly into that design. Academic life did not inspire him, and he has described feeling average in most areas except one: performance. Acting offered something different. It wasn't about rank or obedience, but about observation and empathy. After serving in the United States Army, he made a decisive turn toward theater, using the GI Bill to study acting in New York. This transition was not dramatic rebellion but quiet determination. He chose uncertainty over predictability. That early choice, to follow craft instead of expectation, set the tone for a career defined less by ambition for fame and more by devotion to the discipline of storytelling. Duvall's early years in entertainment were modest and formative. He trained at neighborhood playhouses and performed summer stock theater, including work at Gateway Playhouse in Long Island. These productions were not glamorous, but they were rigorous. Repetition, rehearsal, and respect for text shaped his foundation. Television soon followed, with appearances on anthology series such as Playhouse 90 and The Defenders. These roles were brief, sometimes anonymous, yet invaluable. They required adaptability and emotional precision within tight time frames. On Broadway, he appeared in Wait Until Dark, proving his ability to command tension without excess. Even then, critics noted his restraint. He did not dominate scenes through volume but through presence. This philosophy, less display, more truth, became his hallmark. By the time he transitioned into film, he carried with him a deep respect for narrative structure and character integrity. Those early experiences shaped not only his technique, but also his expectations of what storytelling should prioritize. One of Duvall's earliest film roles demonstrated how powerfully subtlety could resonate. In To Kill a Mockingbird, he portrayed Boo Radley, a character who speaks almost no dialogue. Opposite Gregory Peck as Atticus Finch, Duvall relied entirely on physical stillness and emotional suggestion. The performance lasted only minutes, yet it became unforgettable. That role foreshadowed his career-long belief that silence can be expressive. Throughout the 1970s, he collaborated with influential filmmakers, including Francis Ford Coppola in The Godfather. As Tom Hagen, he embodied calm intelligence amid chaos. The character was not flamboyant, but he anchored the narrative's moral tension. Duvall approached Hagen not as a supporting figure, but as an internal compass. That depth exemplified what he later felt was fading from mainstream cinema: layered characters whose motivations unfold gradually rather than being announced. His early filmography reflects a period when studios were willing to trust actors to communicate complexity without overstatement. When discussing Hollywood's evolution, Duvall often focuses on structural change rather than specific individuals. In earlier decades, mid-budget dramas thrived. Studios invested in scripts that explored moral ambiguity and personal conflict. Over time, blockbuster economics began to dominate. Intellectual property, sequels, and global box office potential became primary considerations. Duvall has remarked in interviews that this shift subtly reshaped creative priorities. Writers increasingly tailored stories to market demands, and executives evaluated projects through risk assessment models. None of this is inherently negative, he acknowledges. Film is both art and business. However, he suggests that balance matters. When financial predictability overshadows narrative experimentation, something intangible is diminished. He does not argue that quality storytelling has vanished, only that it competes within a louder environment. Independent cinema continues to flourish, yet large studios rarely champion intimate dramas the way they once did. Duvall's reflections stem from comparison. Having experienced both systems, he notices the difference in how decisions are made and whose voices carry authority. A defining example of Duvall's commitment to personal storytelling is The Apostle. The project originated decades earlier after he visited a Pentecostal church in Arkansas while researching a role. The emotional intensity of the service left a lasting impression. Rather than depict religion as polished certainty, Duvall envisioned a flawed preacher wrestling with violence and guilt. Studios repeatedly rejected the script, uncertain about its commercial viability. Instead of shelving it, Duvall financed much of the film himself, serving as writer, director, producer, and lead actor. The process was risky and exhausting, yet the finished film earned critical acclaim and an Academy Award nomination for Duvall's performance. More importantly, it validated his belief that audiences respond to authenticity, even when the subject matter is uncomfortable. The Apostle stands as evidence that conviction can overcome market hesitation. For Duvall, it symbolized artistic perseverance. He proved that deeply personal narratives still have space if creators are willing to shoulder responsibility. Another widely discussed moment in Duvall's career involved the Godfather Part III. Salary negotiations reportedly stalled when his compensation differed significantly from that of Al Pacino. Rather than continue under terms he felt undervalued his contribution, Duvall declined to participate. The decision surprised many observers, as the franchise was culturally iconic. Yet his choice aligned with a consistent pattern. Respect outweighs visibility. Tom Hagen was written out rather than recast, and audiences sensed the absence. Duvall later described the situation not as resentment but principle. He believed professional recognition should reflect narrative importance. Walking away carried financial cost and forfeited association with a major release, but it reinforced his autonomy. This episode illustrates how he navigated power structures. Instead of protesting publicly, he quietly removed himself. That restraint mirrors his acting style, measured, deliberate, and rooted in internal conviction rather than spectacle. In later interviews, Duvall has spoken about creative environments where fear inhibits honesty. He emphasizes that storytelling thrives on contradiction. Characters should be flawed, uncertain, and occasionally unlikable. When artists worry excessively about backlash or alignment with prevailing opinion, nuance can disappear. Duvall sometimes describes himself as politically independent, wary of ideological labels. His concern is less about policy than about artistic freedom. Cinema, he argues, should explore humanity in its full complexity. Flattened narratives may feel safer, but they rarely endure. He contrasts contemporary caution with earlier eras when films challenged audiences directly. Importantly, his critique is not generational. He praises young actors and directors who pursue authenticity. His frustration targets systemic pressure rather than individual ambition. In his view, courage in storytelling requires institutional trust that viewers can interpret ambiguity without explicit guidance. Whether one agrees with him or not, his argument invites reflection on how creative risk is measured in a rapidly shifting media landscape. Even in his later years, Duvall continued to select roles that reflected depth over scale. In the Western miniseries Broken Trail, he portrayed a weathered rancher confronting moral responsibility. The performance earned him awards recognition and reaffirmed his command of quiet authority. More recently, he appeared in The Pale Blue Eye, demonstrating that subtlety remains compelling on modern platforms. These projects did not rely on spectacle, they relied on character study. For Duvall, longevity is not about constant visibility but consistent integrity. He has adapted to industry changes without surrendering core values. Streaming services, international markets, and digital production have transformed distribution, yet the essentials of performance remain unchanged. Listening, reacting, inhabiting. His career suggests that while systems evolve, craft endures. Whether Hollywood has lost focus on storytelling may depend on perspective. Through Duvall's lens, the answer is complex, less a collapse than a recalibration, still unfolding with each new generation of filmmakers.